we're here. And here's why we're here. The trustees in Milwaukee are proposing a plan to help fund our pension. And that's required under federal law. So that's why we're doing this. I would prefer not ever having this meeting, but we have it. And the reason we're having it, the reason we're having a vote next Tuesday, is we are proposing to modify our collective bargaining agreement, our union contract, by moving employer contributions from one retirement plan to another. And we didn't want to do that without members saying yes or members saying no. We got to bring it back to the collective bargaining parties, and they have to agree to it. If they don't, the government sets what they call a default plan. If you guys can't get your act together and agree to something, well, we're going to solve your problem for you. And that default plan isn't pretty. So just know that a choice had to be made, and it had to be made by September, the end of September of this year, where every individual trustee in the fund gets fined by the federal government $1,100 a day. So we had to come up with a plan. And again, if no agreement is made, there's a default plan that the federal government says, that's your plan. By the end of March of this year, we had to come up with this plan where the employer was going to get hit with a surcharge. Well, we didn't come up with the plan, we were a day late. The employer is going to face a 5% surcharge of their contributions for the month of April. And so until we reach an agreement with the employer, they'll have to pay that 5% surcharge. If there's no agreement, by November, there's an additional 5% surcharge. They can pay it for 13 months, 12 months, and you can bet your bottom dollar they'd come after it in negotiations next year. Because we saw what happened to our brothers and sisters across the river. While it wasn't a surcharge, when the employer has to pay a whole bunch of money to help fund a pension plan, we pay for it as employees, as workers, as members, in many different ways. All right, the trustees have developed 4 options, 4 rehabilitation plans. Plan number 1 is kind of what we're calling a baseline. If nothing changes for anybody, this is plan 1. What does that cost? Plan number 2, increase early retirement reduction factors for all participants. Everybody in this room. If we were to choose this scenario number 2, everybody would suffer you could call it a penalty for leaving before age 65. So we worked very hard to avoid that. We don't like scenario number 2. Number 3, increase early retirement reduction factors for only inactive vested. Inactive vested, what that means is somebody that's quit. No longer in the store, but we promised a pension to them because they worked there for 5 years. Under scenario 3, they will lose that subsidy pre-age 65. Only those that have left will suffer that loss of the subsidy. Number 4 is the default plan. The one that if we can't agree to anything, if we can't get our act together, the government says, here's what you get. So you lose the early retirement reductions. You eliminate the disability benefit. And even those that are already receiving a disability would have their pension, their disability pension reduced because of that loss of reduction factor. Eliminate the 60-month payout. That would be eliminated under the default plan or our 4th scenario. Eliminate the life insurance. It eliminates the pre-retirement death benefit. In addition, it would reduce our accrual to 1%. Currently, we have 1.25% in our accrual rate. Under scenario 4, or the default plan, that would get reduced to 1%. And that's the minimum allowed by law under the Pension Protection Act. This is a pretty ugly scenario. And this isn't something that the trustees chose. This is what the government says you have to do. Here's the costs associated with these 4 choices. So remember, scenario one was no changes for anybody. Nothing happens. Status quo. Here's our current contributions, $1.25 for full-time, $55 for part-time, and you'll see it all the way down the line on all these plans. You'll also see scenario number 4, reducing all the benefits, reducing everything. Even though you're reducing everything, still comes with an increased cost. And I only put 2014 up here. It's carried over until 2020 because this is a 10-year plan. The government said you have to devise a 10-year plan. I carried it over to 2014 because this would be the end, normally, of a 3-year contract period for us. 2014 would be the first year of our next agreement. So scenario 1 requires an increased employer contribution for the next 4 years, plus our next contract the next year. That's the problem 653 had, problem we're trying to avoid. Scenario 2, again, even with a reduction in benefits, the early retirement for everybody, even those in this room, still a cost. It's less, but it's still a cost over the next 4 years. And pay particular attention to these numbers. This is the first year of the next agreement. Scenario 3 is the one we're recommending, and here's why. In 10 years, we have to get this plan out of trouble, or what the government calls the red zone. So the actuaries, the bean counters in this fund, projected that out over a period of time, and that's how we arrived at these numbers to help get us out of trouble. What we were looking at as trustees is, what would it take over the course of our contract to require no additional money from the employer? What would it take? And over the course of our agreement, if we do it now, over the 3 years of our agreement, we don't need any additional money. Solves the problem for everyone. Scenario 4 is the default plan, where we lose, all the benefits of this fund, all the bells and whistles, all the extras. And here's the irony. It still costs more money in 2014 than by putting the money in now saves us at the end. In 2014 when we're negotiating our next agreement. Now we know those numbers will change, but they'll still maintain this relationship of this number will be higher. And why would you do that? Why would you reduce the accrual factor, eliminate all those benefits, when we have an option to fix our plan? So that's one of many reasons we're recommending scenario number 3, and it's 50 cents for full-time, 22 cents for part-time. I think the critical piece is right here. This will eliminate the need for any additional required pension money for 4 years and maintain current benefits for all active members. And again, I just have to keep going back to what happened to our brothers and sisters across the river and the $1.50 that they had to put in their pension to maintain their fund, and it came at a terrible price in many areas of their agreement. If we don't, if our members decide that's not a good idea, I don't want to do that, we get the default plan. And we've got to go to the employer and say, well, all right, through the course of the next contract, we're going to need money. I guess we could get it from the 401. But remember what it costs us in terms of our benefits, and remember what it costs us in 2014, more money than if we were to do it now. Doesn't mean they're going to, negotiations won't be difficult given the economy, but certainly this part of it has been solved. And again, it maintains pension benefits the way they are for everybody working today. And rarely across the country in the negotiations that I get to see and read about, they don't have this option. We do, and we should take advantage.